o'clock here in New York, middle of the night, New Zealand, and there is new reaction and new information this hour after the deadliest mass shooting in New Zealand's history. 49 listed as dead after a well-planned attack targeting Friday prayers. Two different mosques. We're getting new information. This is God's country. The South Island of New Zealand is heaven on earth, and that's part of the reason why it was targeted. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to Friday. We'll take you through it as we go for the next 3 hours. Sandra.
Good morning to you, Bill. Horrifying news overnight. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. One man has been arrested and charged with murder. Two other armed suspects being held in custody at this time after a gunman opened fire inside two mosques, then posted an unverified video of the massacre, which was later removed, along with a hate-filled manifesto posted before the attack. Witnesses recalling the terrifying scene.
We heard, the firing, and it was from the main entrance of the building. And then everybody just ran toward the back doors just to save themselves. When fighting stopped, I just have a look from over fence. There was one guy changing his, the gun and taking the other one because he parked on this side driveway next to the mosque house, and he just took the gun and then fighting started again.
Jonathan Hunt's live in our West Coast Bureau. Jonathan, tell us how this attack played out.
Good morning, Sandra. It's a massacre that has left New Zealand and indeed the world stunned. Authorities in New Zealand calling it a terrorist attack by people with, quote, extremist views, and the Prime Minister describing the events of Friday as, quote, one of New Zealand's darkest days. It was aimed deliberately at Muslims. A gunman live streaming the attack via a camera mounted on his head. We won't be showing any of that video for obvious reasons, but I have watched it for the sake of our reporting, and I can tell you it is truly one of the most horrific acts of violence anyone will ever see. The gunman drives calmly toward a mosque, playing music, talking to himself, saying, "Let's get this party started." He then takes weapons from his trunk, walks toward the mosque, which was filling up for Friday prayers, and opens fire. At least two men gunned down at the doorway. Then he walks into the mosque and shoots every single person he can see. He reloads several times and at one point goes back into a room where two large groups of bodies are laying on the floor, many of them already dead, some appear to be wounded. He walks calmly around, taking kill shots, finishing off his victims with head or body shots. Once he leaves the mosque, he shoots several people on the street, including a woman wearing traditional Muslim dress. She is wounded. She lies on the street crying out. The gunman walks up to her and once again delivers the final shot. He then, Sandra, gets back in his car, drives over that woman and continues to shoot other people from his car. The video stops after about 16 gut-wrenching minutes. It is, I can tell you, pure evil. Sandra?
Jonathan, what more do we know about the attacker and any accomplices?
Well, the man on the video also left what New Zealand authorities are describing as a manifesto online. In it, he describes himself as a 28-year-old Australian citizen. He talks about intimidating and repelling what he repeatedly calls Muslim invaders. He says mass immigration is a threat to civilization, and he says he supports President Trump as a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose. Police now have 3 people in custody, none of whom, according to officials, had been on their terrorism radar, either in New Zealand or Australia. The Prime Minister said New Zealand is a proud melting pot of ethnicities and languages, and she had a message for the attackers and for the people of New Zealand.
We share common values, and the one that we place the currency on right now and tonight is our compassion and the support for the community of those directly affected by this tragedy. And secondly, the strongest possible condemnation of the ideology of the people who did this. You may have chosen us, but we utterly reject and condemn you.
The gunman who live-streamed this horrific attack also said in the manifesto that he hoped to go to trial. He says he would plead not guilty because, in his view, he was taking action against an occupying force. It was not that, of course, as leaders around the world are saying today. It was an act of pure hate, pure evil, and utterly condemned in Christchurch, a city I know well, Sandra. I lived there for 10 months. My brother still lives there. They are very, very good people who have just seen the most horrific act imaginable.
A lot of people in this country waking up to learn this news this morning. It is horrifying. Jonathan Hunt will have much more on this coming up. Thank you.
Getting a lot of reaction too, and as we get it, we'll pass it along to you. We're getting word from the White House. This tweet came out a short time ago. The president expressing his support of the victims. Here it is. My warmest sympathy and best wishes goes out to the people of New Zealand after the horrible massacre in the mosque. 49 innocent people have so senselessly died, with so many more seriously injured. The U.S. stands by New Zealand for anything we can do. God bless all. John Bolton also was on camera a short time ago. We're going to share that with you in a moment here. In the meantime, Dr. Waleed Phares, Fox News Foreign Affairs and National Security Analyst. And sir, good morning to you. This is pure evil.
It's pure evil. It's more than that. It's successful pure evil. Dozens and dozens of innocent people, worshippers, being slaughtered by an individual who's claiming even an ideology. Unfortunately, New Zealand now has joined the community of probably 100 countries, victims, countries that are fighting terrorism from any side and all sides. Mosques, churches have been attacked by extremists on all sides. But what is interesting here is that this individual allegedly has been inspired by an ideology that claims that you should take actions, violent actions against immigrants or against members of the Islamic faith. That is something that the government, both in New Zealand and around the world, both in the Arab world and the Muslim world, needs to take action against that ideology.
Okay, you heard Jonathan Hunt's reporting there. This guy wanted to live. And if he's able to take his case to trial, will plead not guilty. He has a message, Waleed, that he wants the whole world to pay attention to. This is sick stuff. How does the Muslim world react when they hear this?
Well, first of all, Bill, it is very understandable what he's trying to do on the political level. Obviously, it's horrific, and it should be condemned completely on the action level. What Breivik has done in Norway, if you remember a few years ago, he went ahead and killed many members of the ruling party, because he accused them of opening the borders of Norway to immigrants, and he rejected that. In this case, he is repeating, the person who is now in custody is repeating what Breivik has done, because he wants to get to the court. He knows that in liberal democracies, when you get to the court, what are you going to get? You're going to get the cameras. You're going to get the attention of millions and millions of people. We're trying to avoid now to the discussion of the actual video or whatever he produced. Wait until he is in court.
Yeah. How does the West react, do you believe? What measures does the government of New Zealand take?
Well, the first measures that the government of New Zealand is taking already is basically to pay attention that no other attacks will take place. Now they have a model, a dramatic, bloody model. Second, coordination with the other intelligence services. It is happening. And to answer a question that you've asked me before that, the Muslim world is helping. I mean, they have leaders now from the UAE, from Egypt, from Saudi Arabia, our allies, who are coming very strongly, are saying we need to fight it together, the West and the Arab and Muslim world, together against extremists from both sides.
Waleed, thank you. We'll monitor the information as it comes in, as it changes throughout the morning. Waleed Phares, they're live in Washington, D.C. Thank you, sir, for coming in here today. Sandra, I believe we mentioned 4 apparently were in police custody. That number may change. It may be less, it may be a little more, but we'll monitor it through the day. The one thing I just want to point out is that apparently in this message that this killer, this sick killer has left, is that part of the reason why he went to New Zealand and trained there to carry out a killing like this is because New Zealand is so far from the rest of the 6 billion of us on this planet, and wanted to show that mass immigration is a threat everywhere, and you're not free from it. That was part of the reason why he picked that area.
Just want to get this in here, too. Christian Nielsen, our Homeland Security Secretary, just tweeted out, heart and prayers go to the victims and their families on this brutal violence in New Zealand. This was an act of terror. The government stands with our friends in New Zealand and will provide any assistance they need. That's the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. And also, Bill, she just put this out. There is no specific or credible threat to our homeland, but all Americans should remain vigilant so we can prevent such violent hate.
The story is going to change throughout the day, and when it does, we'll get back to it. In the meantime, 10 past, got some more news right now.
Meanwhile, President Trump poised to use his first veto after the Republican-controlled Senate voted to block his national emergency declaration yesterday. 12 Republicans voting with Democrats in a rare bipartisan rebuke of the president, citing a constitutional issue.
It's a question about the balance of power that is core to our Constitution. This is not about the president or about border security.
To me, this statute allows the president to use military construction money in a national emergency, and I think we have one at the border.
It shouldn't be so unusual for members of the president's own party to stand with us and hold him to account when he does wrong, especially a president who so overreaches. But I'm thankful that Republican senators did the right thing.
Kevin Corke is live at the White House this morning. Kevin, good morning to you.
Morning, Sandra. Now, we don't know precisely when that resolution will make its way to the president's desk here at the White House today, but when it does, we're pretty confident he'll not only talk about it, but very probably he'll even show the power of the pen on camera. Again, no guarantees, but that is certainly possible. We do expect to see the president traveling just a bit. Again, as we take a look inside the numbers, this will be his very first use of the power of the veto pen. And for those keeping score, that would be far fewer than his predecessors, although, to be fair, he had a GOP-controlled House during his first 2 years in office, as you see there, President Reagan, with 78, which is pretty incredible. The president this time will be rejecting a bipartisan effort. He said this on Twitter, quote, "I look forward to vetoing the just-passed Democrat-inspired resolution, which would open borders while increasing crime, drugs, and trafficking in our country. I thank all of the strong Republicans who voted to support border security and our desperately needed wall." I promise to give you more granular information and detail as I get it. But again, we expect it'll probably happen here today, Sandra. And when it does, I'll be here for you. But for now, back to you.
We know you're on it for us. Kevin Corke, thank you.
11 past. This happening overnight as well from the Middle East. Retaliation from Israel after rockets are fired toward Tel Aviv. Tensions now rising along the Gaza Strip. Could there be a truce in the works today? Talk about that. Congressman Mac Thornberry is going to stop by in a few moments on that, Sandra.
Plus, the investigation of the Ethiopian Airlines crash centering on the plane's black boxes as a new report sheds light on exactly when the pilot first noticed trouble after takeoff. We've got the latest in a live report coming up.
So in a moment, hear why Senator Lindsey Graham is blocking a resolution calling for the Mueller report to be made public. We'll explain that. This as we learn new details on Peter Strzok's closed-door testimony in front of Congress. What he said about Hillary Clinton's email server. Congressman Peter King weighs in on that in moments.
This has been wrong from the get-go. That's why these investigations are important. Shouldn't be just one set of rules for us regular folk and a different set if your name is Clinton, Comey, Lynch, Lerner, Page, Strzok. It's got to be one set of rules in this country, and that's equal treatment under the law.
Obviously, greatly disturbed by this, what seems to be a terror attack, this hate crime in New Zealand. We've been in touch with our embassy overnight. We're still getting details. But the State Department and others are following up on it. We're very concerned. We're going to cooperate with the New Zealand authorities to the extent we can.
So John Bolton from the North Lawn of the White House in the last hour. Peaceful Island Nation is in shock. This is an unprecedented terror attack, 49 dead, a gunman opening fire on worshipers at two mosques about 3 miles apart, Christchurch, New Zealand. New York Congressman Peter King on the Homeland Security Committee, and sir, good morning to you. We brought you in to talk about the Mueller matter, but this New Zealand thing is just, it really turns your stomach, sir.
It really does, Bill. It's absolutely evil, and it's essential that everyone of goodwill, anyone with any sense of decency condemn this. It's inhumane, it's evil, it's horrible, and we have to be on the lookout in this country that there's no copycat attacks. There's no evidence of any, but again, something like this, which is so hateful, can inspire hatred in others. So again, that's why it's so important for people of goodwill to stand together, condemn it, stand with those in the mosque, stand with obviously our friends in New Zealand, and again, just make it clear the civilized world will never, ever tolerate this, and there's no such thing as a manifesto for death. This just has to be condemned.
Think about those who are killed. Among those who were killed, these are migrant workers. They come from places like Bangladesh, and they go there to improve their own lives. It's stunning stuff, and we'll be on it throughout the morning here. But let's just touch now on some of these critical questions that have come up the past week. On the Mueller matter, we don't know when the report's coming out, et cetera. I thought Lindsey Graham put his finger on a couple really important points. And Devin Nunes did as well on our show yesterday. He said the following about it.
The Clinton campaign hired Christopher Steele to go and talk to Russians to get dirt on Trump. That's never been prosecuted. So what in the hell is Mueller doing? I have no idea. I mean, this is something that could take a month for the FBI to actually go and do. But instead, this has gone on for 2 years. This is some kind of joke.
Do you consider this to be a joke, sir?
No, it's not a joke. I have respect for Bob Mueller. I'm looking forward to the report. I want to see what's in it. I do think, however, that from all we've seen and heard, a lot has been overlooked here. I mean, I was on the Intelligence Committee. I can't go into all the things we've heard, but the fact is that this whole investigation against President Trump, which began in the summer of 2016, there was no basis for it. There was no premise for it. This was the most flimsy type of evidence. There's far more evidence as far as the Clinton campaign than it would be with the Trump campaign. And I would have said it was probably wrong to start an investigation, either one of them. But if they are going to go into this intensity into the Trump campaign, and so far, after all this time of really 2.5 years, going back to the summer of 2016, and since Mueller was appointed in 2017, there's no evidence I've seen of any collusion at all. As Devin Nunes said, if there was collusion, a cooperation with the Russians, it was with the Clinton campaign. So, what's good for one should be good for the other. And that's why, and also the fact that the highest levels of the FBI, the allegations against them, the admissions by them, the number of ones who have had to been fired, and the whole thing with the Pfizer warrant against the Trump campaign. Again, so much has been violated here, and it just gets lost, I think, when all this talk about the Mueller report on President Trump. I'm fairly confident, I have no inside information at all, that you're going to show there was no collusion at all. Doesn't mean that this is going to stop all the talk. They were looking for something probably with some bank somewhere, which has nothing to do with Russia.
You're right about that.
Yeah,
Quickly, I just want to get back to Lindsey Graham's point here. He blocked the resolution that overwhelmingly passed in the House, 420 to 0, to make the Mueller report public. We'll see what happens when Bill Barr gets his hands on it. But Lindsey Graham blocked it because he wants the special counsel to look into the Hillary Clinton email matter and the Carter Page FISA memo. And I'm certainly that's top of mind for you, too. I got about 30 seconds. We've got to get back to the breaking news.
Yeah, Bill, absolutely essential. Those are matters that have to be investigated. FISA, this is such an... Listen, I support FISA, but it's really one of those balanced edge things that if it's abused, it can violate the rights of innocent people. And here, I believe rights were violated. There was no basis for it. There was, in fact, there was improper evidence used to obtain it. That has to be investigated. And what happened with the email investigation, whether or not there was an agreement, and it appears that there was, Peter Strzok seems to say there was, then that also shows a double standard of justice, should be investigated.
Thank you, Peter. Peter King, talk to you again real soon. Babylon, New York today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
21 past now. Sam.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, new fallout for Lori Loughlin after the Full House actress was charged in that college admissions scam. How the scandal is now affecting her daughters. Plus, Beto O'Rourke in Iowa after announcing his run for the White House as he tries to gain traction in a crowded Democratic field. But will his record or lack thereof end up hurting him in the end?
The challenges have never been greater, or more severe, or more critical, or more defining for the future. Democracy must be fixed, must be renewed.
Fox News alert Israel striking back at Hamas military targets on the Gaza Strip overnight after a rare rocket attack on Tel Aviv. Trey Gangst is live on the Israeli-Gaza border with the latest there. Trey?
Sandra, after 2 rockets were fired last night towards Israel's largest city, the first time this has happened since 2014, the Israeli military responded with 100 airstrikes inside the Gaza Strip behind me. Israeli warplanes and attack helicopters used missiles to target mostly Hamas positions inside the Strip. Hamas does control the Gaza Strip currently with a population of 2 million people. Now, in response, there was a series of rockets fired into southern Israel in addition to those 2 original original rockets. And Sandra, I want to show you something right now. It does appear that a tank, an Israeli tank, has pulled up close to the Gaza border. If you come back to us here on camera, this tank does look like it is prepared on standby to fire should anything else escalate here along the border. The Israeli military is prepared for any future escalation that would happen here, but it does appear that right now a ceasefire has been at least temporarily brokered with the help of Egyptian negotiators inside the Gaza Strip right now, trying to find some sort of common understanding, Sandra, between the Israelis and Hamas to avoid any sort of larger escalation in the region. Sandra?
Really something to get a live look at that, Trey. Your crew was at the border last night when more rockets were fired into Israel. What did you see?
Sandra, that's right. As warplanes pounded the Gaza Strip last night, our crew was along the border. And in response, again, there were militants inside Gaza who fired a series of rockets into southern Israel. Our cameras captured those interceptions by Israel's missile defense system, the Iron Dome, as you can see in this video. Now, with Israeli elections upcoming and the one-year anniversary of Palestinian demonstrations along the Israel-Gaza border, Sandra, coming up here at the end of the month, this may not be the last time that we see a situation like this unfold. Sandra?
Trey Yinks, thank you.
So a killer opening fire on two different mosques during Friday prayers. 49 are dead. The story is developing by the moment here. So in a moment, what we're learning about the gunman right here on our program.
And what we now know about the moments before that Ethiopian plane crash. What a new report is revealing about the moments after takeoff. Plus this.
I wish that he would also prioritize H.R. 1, which actually reinstates voting rights and helps get money out of politics. But he doesn't seem to be interested in improving our democracy. He seems more interested in running procedural votes.
So the Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez calls it a political stunt. But the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell wants people on record what he is doing in the Senate to ramp up a vote on the Green New Deal. We'll tell you about that coming up.
All right, here we are about 50 seconds into the trading day on a Friday morning. Quick check at the markets. The Dow up 50 points in early trading. U.S. stocks are getting a boost on reports of progress on those U.S.-China trade talks. Markets have been very sensitive to all the developments there. There's still a lot of optimism that a deal will get done. President Trump saying a deal could come in the next few weeks. So possibly we could end this week on a high note with the Dow jumping about 40 points out of the gate.
We had a pretty good week. I mean, all things considered, up a little bit every day, just a little bit. I mean, in the end, it's real money.
Boeing was definitely one of the big laggards and one of the big drags on the Dow because of the plane crash and now all those planes getting grounded. A lot of questions about how Boeing's going to handle this going forward, what the fix will be, but that has been a drag on the markets. Nonetheless, a gain to start out this Friday morning.
Right?
We'll take it.
And you talk about Boeing, still no solid answers now. On that plane crash in Ethiopia, French authorities said to be examining the damaged data and voice recorders from the Ethiopian Airlines flight. 157 dead, including 8 Americans. New reports suggest the pilot noticed trouble immediately after takeoff. But what was that trouble and what caused it? Griff Jenkins is on this in D.C. Griff, good morning. What can you learn or tell us about the pilot's communications today?
Good morning, Bill. Well, citing a person who reviewed air traffic communications, the New York Times this morning reports that the captain's communications at first were calm, but soon thereafter requested permission to return to the airport in, quote, a panicky voice, saying to air traffic controllers this: break, request back home. Request vector for landing. The Times also reporting that controllers observed the new Boeing 737 MAX 8 drastically oscillating or pitching up and down, a sign that was something was definitely wrong. Thereafter, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, as we know, tragically went down, killing all 157 people aboard. The flight was only minutes into its flight from Addis Ababa to Nairobi. Now, French authorities are getting their first look at that data box, which you can see appears to be of damaged and making it a bit difficult to retrieve all the data. Now, representatives for Ethiopian Airlines are in Paris assisting the investigation, Bill.
And what's the latest on how it's impacting flights here at home, Griff?
Well, it's still impacting flights for sure. The short answer is that delays are coming from concerns across the country. Now, since the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX 8 and 9s, airlines have been scrambling to find replacement aircraft for flights that were scheduled on those planes. The impact is lessened somewhat, Bill, because the plane is new and there's not that many flights on them. But, for instance, Southwest Airlines, which has the largest number of those in service, are working to resolve disruptions. The CEO for Southwest, Gary Kelly, issued this statement about those planes, saying, "Our experience with the MAX, along with other U.S. operators, has been phenomenal. We've operated over 40,000 flights covering almost 90,000 hours. But the fact remains, it's a second crash in 5 months on these planes, Bill, and rightfully so. That has a lot of people alarmed. I know I got this morning, as you and thousands of others of people that fly American Airlines may have also gotten a note assuring passengers of the security and attention to this issue." Bill?
Thank you, Griff. More updates when we get them in Washington.
The Green New Deal could get a vote in the Senate in the coming weeks. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell scheduling a procedural vote on the progressive policy when lawmakers return from a week-long recess. Andy Puzder joins us now, the former CEO of CKE Restaurants, author of the book, The Capitalist Comeback, The Trump Boom, and the Left's Plot to Stop It. All right, Andy, good morning.
Hi, Sandra. Good to see you.
Tell us how you really feel. I mean, I know that you're in line with Mitch McConnell and others. All right, bring it up for a vote. Let's see what happens, and let's really see where each and every lawmaker stands on this.
Yeah, who ever heard of a bill that's so bad that the people that introduced it don't want a hearing and the other party does want a hearing? I mean, socialism only survives in the dark. It never really survives in the light. And hearings, a vote and hearings on this bill will bring these socialist policies that the far left wing of the Democratic Party are advocating for into the light. And, that will alienate a lot of liberal, moderate Democrats, and that could hand President Trump the 2020 election.
Really part of the problem with so many who even say, okay, well, I'll try to support it, but I don't know enough. There's not a lot of specifics when it comes to this deal. Big Labor really took this on and said this could bring harm to millions. Well, one of our reporters, Peter Ducey, was able to ask Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who co-authored the Green New Deal and introduced it. He was able to ask her about this, Big Labor's objection to it. Listen.
The Green New Deal is all about mass investment in infrastructure and jobs, particularly we're talking about steel workers, electrical workers. I mean, there's so much work to do in transitioning to 100% renewable energy, and we have to do that work with union labor. We have to do that work with by reinvigorating our entire workforce. So I don't think that that it's representative of an actual split.
So that was Ocasio-Cortez herself explaining that. But Big Labor's not buying it. They're saying it's going to bring harm to millions, and it's short on specifics, really, is what they're taking issue with. How do you get there?
Well, I very rarely agree with Big Labor, but I have to say they're showing some real reason here. This bill would it would basically take the construction industry, transportation industry, the energy industry, and the medical sector of our economies, and put them all under control of the government. Now, as you know, but there may be millennials watching, so I should say socialism is where the government controls the means of production, distribution, and exchange in the economy. Capitalism is where individuals control it through their vote. They vote with every dollar they spend on what succeeds and what fails. She wants to turn all of that responsibility over to the government, and it will destroy the American economy. It will destroy. Will be Venezuela. So I thank God that the labor unions are stepping up and saying, look, these are the kind of programs that bring poverty and misery, not that bring abundance and prosperity.
Because I'm going to quote a Republican here, Greg Walden. He's a ranking member on the Energy and Commerce Committee. He's saying that this plan has become a central plank in Pelosi's party's platform. It's billed as a solution for climate change. He goes on to criticize the Green New Deal, but the left is saying, what is the right's answer to this? When you see the polling out there, there is great interest in tackling climate change. What is the right's response?
Well, first of all, it's impossible to have 100% renewable energy right now. We just don't have the technology to do that. You'd have to cover vast amounts of the country in solar panels. It would destroy wildlife. It just isn't reasonable. And wind really doesn't produce enough consistent energy to do that. Now, nuclear power, that would work. And there are actually a lot of environmentalists out there now saying, hey, if we're going to really solve this problem, we need to look at nuclear. You've got natural gas, which burns very cleanly. So, in fact, the United States has reduced its carbon emissions more than just any other industrialized nation just by using natural gas. So there are solutions to this problem. Where I get suspicious is when it looks like people are using climate change for political reasons. So they don't actually propose a solution. They talk about renewables like it's reality. It's not. There are realistic solutions. And if the climate change people were proposing those solutions, I think they'd have more credibility.
It's interesting when you looked at Nancy Pelosi's initial reaction to the Green New Deal. She dismissed it as the Green Dream or whatever they call it. Nobody knows what it is, was her initial response. She saw all the enthusiasm out there, decided to embrace that. But then later on, she said that Congress needs something that is evidence-based. So she doesn't seem completely sold on this. We'll see what happens with the vote.
Well, she's not stupid. You may disagree with her, but she's not
Nancy
dumb.
Pelosi.
Yeah. She's got good political senses. She's a smart woman. She sees the dangers in this. This is a real threat to the Democratic Party, and there is a certain wing of the party that doesn't care, and there's another wing of the party that realizes the problems.
Finally, what do you think what happens when this goes up for a vote in the Senate?
Oh, I think it'll be destroyed. I think it'll get killed. What we really need to see is who votes for it. That's the only real question.
Mitch McConnell's goal?
Yep.
All right. Andy Puzder, great to have you here this morning.
Great to be here,
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Andy. 20 minutes now before the hour. All right, on the hoop court last night. Did you see it? Did you stay up? Duke's freshman superstar Zion Williamson made a return to the basketball court. Smitty, I'm telling you, he was out for a month with a knee injury. There was no rust on this man. He was a perfect 13 of 13 from the floor. He had 5 monster dunks. Duke beat Syracuse 84-72. They advanced in the ACC tournament.
So last night I'm getting some stuff done.
All right, tell me.
And Bill Hemmer pops up on my Twitter.
Yeah.
Zion,
just one word.
I have to go tune in.
I mean, and then you tuned in and you saw what? He's 18. He's 18 years old. He's been sitting out for about a month and a half. He clearly has fresh legs. He puts Duke back in a position to be the favorite team to win it all this year, and he will be the National Player of the Year.
Bill Hemmer, I love your enthusiasm.
On half a season, this kid. He really is a phenom. It's awesome to watch. Age 18. Go. See.
And moving on to this story now, our top story of the morning, tragedy in New Zealand as survivors of that terror attack share their stories.
I heard the big sound, the gun, and the second one I heard, I ran. There were lots of people were sitting in the floor. The gun was around the door. I ran behind the mosque, and I sitting behind the container. I rang to the police.
49 people killed in an attack on 2 mosques, dozens more wounded. Reaction pouring in from around the world this morning, including Congress. Up next, House Armed Services Committee ranking member Mac Thornberry will join us live. Plus this.
It doesn't matter. I'll probably have to veto. And it's not going to be overturned. And we're going to have our whole thing. It's been, the legal scholars all say it's totally constitutional. It's very important. It's really a border security vote.
Well, he put out one word, too. He said veto. President Trump ready for his first veto as president to block that emergency declaration. So our team, is going to take that on, and a lot more coming up. First, here's Lindsey Graham. Check it out.
Trump will prevail. His veto will be sustained. I just want my colleagues to know I appreciate and respect your concerns, but I don't share them.
State Department announcing all U.S. diplomats have now left Venezuela for the time being as tensions there escalate amid Venezuela's ongoing humanitarian and political crisis. Well, despite the withdrawal, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says diplomats will continue their mission of supporting opposition leader Juan Guaido's effort to oust disputed President Nicolas Maduro.
I want to offer my personal condolences to the nation of New Zealand in the wake of the grotesque mosque attacks in Christchurch. The thoughts and prayers of the American people are with the victims and their families today. The United States condemns this hateful assault. We pledge our unwavering solidarity with the government and people of New Zealand.
Yeah, amen to that. Mike Pompeo, a short time ago, State Department, horrifying day overseas. It's being called a well-planned terror attack, and the target, immigrants and Muslims in 2 mosques filled with worshipers. One suspect has been charged, and authorities describe him as having extremist views. Congressman Mac Thornberry, member of the House Armed Services Committee. Sir, good morning to you. There's some breaking news on North Korea that I'll get to in a moment, too, as well. But your sense of what you're hearing about this New Zealand, sir?
Well, it's a reminder that extremists come from a variety of political positions and are willing to use violence to further their cause. The other interesting thing, once you get beyond the horror and feeling sympathy for the victims, but one of the attackers chose to video part of this attack, 17-minute video. And it's also a reminder that social media has become one of the domains of warfare. We saw ISIS use this. Now we've seen these guys use it. The Russians, in a different variety, use it because they're trying to influence public opinion. Terrorism is an attack to affect political change. And that's another example that we witnessed this morning.
Yeah. From the White House, Sarah Sanders says this, quote, "The United States strongly condemns the attack in Christchurch. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. We stand in solidarity with the people of New Zealand and their government against this vicious act of hate." We might see the president on this next hour. He's going over to the Pentagon for a meeting there, so we'll follow that when it happens. In the meantime, just within the last 30 minutes, Secretary of State Pompeo with comments about North Korea. I don't know what's going on here, but they're seeing something, Sarah. Here is Secretary Pompeo on that.
In Hanoi, on multiple occasions, he spoke directly to the president and made a commitment that he would not resume nuclear testing, nor would he resume missile testing. So that's Chairman Kim's word. We have every expectation that he will live up to that commitment.
So let's see if that happens. What do you think Kim's up to?
Same song, 57th verse. This morning, the North Koreans threatened to resume nuclear and missile testing if the talks don't continue to go well. We've seen this before. They pretend they're negotiating, but then they go on a different course if it doesn't work, and they escalate up the tensions and hope that they can get some concessions. I think the president's exactly right to put Kim to the test. Are you going to keep your word or not? But the other thing is, while we're talking to them, we have to maintain a strong military posture. While you're talking, you have to have a big stick. And the big stick here is the American military with missile defense, with ships off their coast, etc. That will be the biggest motivator to get them to really talk.
Strangled, too, and I know you agree with that. Jillian Turner was at that press conference. She writes that he was asked about North Korea by several reporters, but he offered up himself the fact that Kim would be breaking a personal commitment that was made in Hanoi. Again, my sense is they're seeing something on the ground based on this reporting earlier in the week about these missile sites.
Well, you may be right. What we have seen are commercial imagery reports in the press that while these talks are going on, the North Koreans continue to build missiles, they continue to build their nuclear weapons, and then you had the public statement this morning that they may go back to testing. There may be other intelligence to provide that sort of warning, but the trend is not necessarily good, and we cannot stake the security of the United States on the word of Kim Jong-un. Again, that's why our military strength is so vital.
Mike Thornberry, thank you for your time, and thank you for the quick reaction on the developments from the State Department. We'll talk again real soon, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sandra.
Actress Lori Loughlin taking another hit as the college admissions bribery scandal unfolds, how it's affecting her career now and her two daughters. A live report from Los Angeles next.
Kentucky happened on Thursday, leaving a trail of damage. Check it out, the twister bringing down power lines.
Wow.
Covered roads and debris, damaged buildings across the city of Paducah, western Kentucky, on the border with Illinois. One person was injured there. More about that in the show.
New fallout for actress Lori Loughlin and her family in the wake of the college admissions bribery scandal. The Hallmark Channel cutting ties with the actress and her daughters reportedly dropping out of USC after Loughlin and her husband, a fashion designer, were charged in the scheme. William Lajeunesse is live from our Los Angeles bureau with more. William.
Well, Sandra, the fallout continues, and the Loughlin family actually made the job easy for USC by withdrawing their two daughters because they said the girls are afraid of being bullied. That's one of the big questions here for the 8 universities involved, expelling students because they didn't earn a place on campus. Now, USC, which admitted 17 students under false pretense, fired its athletic director, its water polo coach, and 2 former soccer coaches are indicted. UCLA put a men's soccer coach on leave. Stanford fired its sailing coach. Yale fired its soccer coach. Hallmark fired actress Lori Loughlin, who paid $500,000 to get 2 daughters into USC on the rowing team, even though they never rowed. She is unlikely also to return to Netflix hit Fuller House. Actress Felicity Huffman paid $15,000 to use a test taker to raise her daughter's SAT score by an unheard of 400 points to get into Georgetown. Husband William Macy from the TV hit Shameless, he's not named in the indictment, though on recorded FBI calls, he talks about his daughter needing higher scores and extra time, usually reserved for students with learning disabilities. Other parents, William McClashen, headed the private equity company TPG Growth. He paid $50,000 to get his son into USC on as a football place kicker, even though the kid didn't play football. He is on administrative leave. And Manuel Enriquez, CEO of Hercules Capital, valued in excess of $2 billion. He bribed the tennis coach at Georgetown. He is on leave as well. Also, Sandra, heads are rolling at many of the top private prep schools from San Diego to the Bay Area because they're implicated for knowing falsehoods on these kids' applications. Back to you.
Really something to continue to watch the fallout of all this. William LaJeunesse, thank you. Bill.
You know, you get the sense in some of these stories that you're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And I think this is really one of them when you think about the orbit around which a lot of these people had
and how deep this was.
How deep it was and how deep it still may go on the campuses and the admissions office, the graduates themselves, the parents, and what comes to the students who got a rite of passage into the school that are still admitted to that school today.
Everybody around this country talking about that story, and we'll continue to.
We shall. In the meantime, we've got really tough news for you today. 49 are dead, dozens are injured. We're watching the investigation after a deadly terror attack targeting 2 mosques in New Zealand. So what we're learning about the suspect, what we're learning about the police investigation on the ground, all that's still to come here. Top of the next hour on America's Newsroom.
Our hearts go out to them and all of their family, all of their friends, all of their loved ones. And I want to assure everyone that we will do our best for them.